I feel like you have to have had some experiences that you feel are based solely off you being a woman. Like there has to be something that you can look at and say, I identify with that other 99%, where you don't necessarily have the fear of being in a physical confrontation that maybe a lot of the female guards do, and you don't have the fear of maybe being hazed or harassed. But what have you experienced on your end as a female guard that you can relate to some of the other women who maybe don't have your history or your background?
Honestly, not much, because again, appearance wise, like I get a lot of the same response. Like a lot of guys look at me and they're like, she looks like she could fuck me up. I wouldn't want to mess with her. And there's not a lot of girls that have that. So I get that, I'm fortunate in that sense.
You're like, I don't deal with that bullshit. That's just me.
Yeah. And what's funny too, is like, I've gone onto sites where guys have been through the ringer of like the regulars who cause problems and this and that. And then I come on site and it's all peaceful. Nothing happened. I don't know why. I don't know if I've got God helping me out or what. But
no, because there's videos of you whipping people's ass online. Like it's not.
They don't always know that though.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Atypical Security Guard. I want to thank you guys for tuning in today. Today we have a very special guest. We're here with Miss Amanda Bell.
Cage, that's my place to be.
Amanda, how are you?
Doing good. How are you today?
I'm doing great. So just to give you kind of a brief overview, this is my security guard spotlight. We bring on different security guards and we talk about their experience with the industry. It's a way for us to highlight other guards and also people who have a little bit of a different background. I think a lot of times security guards are kind of looked down on because most people don't really know the totality of that person. They see us doing oftentimes very minuscule jobs, jobs that maybe don't have a lot of shine or prestige. And there's a stereotype and a stigma that's around security guards. And I think that by highlighting different guards who are working in different capacities and people that have these extraordinary backgrounds, I'm sure that you've talked to so many guards in so many different situations where you've been in your other profession. There's some amazing people that are doing security that you wouldn't know some of their background and some of their stories. So by highlighting these guards, I think that it's going to help change that narrative around security, and that's really important to me. So I want to thank you so much for your time, for coming on, and for being a guest here.
Absolutely, yeah. I like that idea. I think I kind of think the same thing sometimes too, as far as people's views on security guards. They think we're just rental cops or wannabes or this and this and that. And it's like, no, we're required to have training just as much as anybody else. So.
Yeah. Well, so before we get into your security career, I want to go ahead and just address the elephant in the room here. You are actually a fairly famous professional fighter. You have a history with Invicta. You have a history with Bellator. So why don't you just kind of give everybody a rundown of your history in MMA and what you've done?
Oh, I appreciate that. I've never considered myself famous. I just, I don't know, I'm known in my own circle of fans here and there. But yeah, it's been something I've been doing since I was 19 years old, 33 now. And it's been a huge, huge part of my life. Given me a lot, it's taken a lot, but it's definitely not something that most people understand. It's kind of the same. It's kind of the same with security. It's a lifestyle that not a lot of people understand, and when they try to, it's just like you wouldn't really get it unless you actually did it. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to find individuals who know what the career entails for both sides.
How did you get into MMA? What's your story with that?
I've been a martial artist virtually all my life. Done a lot of martial arts. I wrestled in high school for a little while, and then continued martial arts after I graduated high school. It's just, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of picked up on it because I graduated in 2006, and around those years, UFC was starting to build itself a lot more, and there was a lot more fighters out there, and it was, women were getting involved in it. So I kind of came in on the cusp of things kind of blowing up. And then, actually Invicta FC, when I was still an amateur, had 2 shows. And I think I caught the second one, and I was really inspired because they brought on all female fighters from all over the world and started it that way. And it kind of gave me hope for where my career could go. So it was, I believe my debut was in Invicta 4. Okay. So a lot of, I've had a lot of people call me a veteran of the sport and whatnot, which I'm kind of honored for people to give me that title. It's not something I've ever given myself, because I don't know, I look at people like, Marloes Conan and Chris Cyborg and all the names that were long before I ever came around to be the pioneers. But, it is what it is. I still maintain it to some degree at this point. Pandemics made my career very, very different, very difficult. So that's kind of what brought me back to security, actually.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. So with your current career in security, like, how did you get involved with that?
Somebody that I knew within the fight world, who I've known for several years, he and I met when I was on the cusp of my pro career. I was still an amateur looking for someone to fight me, and holding onto a title belt that I couldn't get anybody to fight me for. So he and I met at one event when I was supposed to have an opponent on. Then that fell through. It was somewhere in Washington, and he and I we stayed friends for a long time. He does security for Rover Security every now and again, and he brought me on to do work for them at the Pendleton Roundup, actually. So my very first experience doing security was at a rodeo.
Oh, and wow.
That was interesting. So I started to learn more about it just by being, thrown into the atmosphere of it all. And I've just learned a lot over the years by working doing different jobs. So, sometimes you're there on a job alone, or you do an event like a rodeo or a concert or some sort of show or festival, and there's people all the time. Or you do club security and you deal with the same jackasses every weekend, that come in on Saturdays at the same time and mess with you. So I've definitely I've grown a lot over the last several years. I've been doing security, I think, about 4 or 5 years now. So it was also kind of an in-between for my MMA. Like, when you get to a certain point as a pro, the best thing you can do for yourself, and what you need to be doing for yourself, is treat it like any other job. You're in the gym all day, every day, 2-3 sessions a day, in and out. And it's hard to do when you have a 9-to-5 job that keeps you busy. So security gave me more of an opportunity to open my schedule up and have days where I didn't work, have days where I worked, maybe in the evenings. So I got my practice out of the way early in the day, and then went on to work all night long. Security gave me that open ability to, again, control my schedule instead of punching a clock at the same time every day, in and out. So
yeah. One of the things that I talk about on this channel a lot is training, specifically like de-escalation training and self-defense and combatives. And in general, when we're having these conversations with other guards on this channel, it's men. And, we talk about the dangers of working in this job, the potential threats. Now, you are a little bit different in this situation. I'm interested to hear your perspective. You're a professional fighter. Like, I'm going to splice in some of the highlights of your fights. Like, you're absolutely jacked, and you're clearly capable of protecting yourself. How do you see self-defense, de-escalation, training in terms of martial arts, all of these things that we're talking about with the security channel here? from your perspective, being someone who's professionally trained, how does that all play in to what you're doing on a daily basis?
I think it's actually been essential, especially since, sorry, I'm coming inside because my neighbors.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
They're fighting. Like, I have two neighbors that insist on having a horrible marriage.
Hey, it's Oregon. It's Salem, Oregon. Your neighbors are going to fight. They're going to shoot things. Like, people don't know. It's crazy. Yeah.
It's insane. Yeah. So, anyway, so for me, it's, like I said, I feel like it's been an essential tool to have the physical knowledge that I have, because I just got my armed licensing like a week ago. I mean, I'm familiar with firearms and everything, of course, but to actually be allowed to carry one is a whole nother step you have to take. You know, you can shoot guns all your life, but if you're a security officer and you don't have the licensing that says, yes, you are allowed to carry this firearm, well, then you can't carry it. So, I've gotten to that point where I was like, well, things are getting rather dangerous out there. And, sorry, hold on.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
My camera just went to sleep. Come on. There we are. Anyway, so, so I just got to that point where, you know, there's a lot that goes on. I've been fortunate enough to not be in any kind of major situations, but having my combat training, even though, yes, I may be a competitor and there are different levels of combative training, it's definitely helped in many ways, especially just to subdue somebody if you're just throwing them out of a club, you know? And I think when people see an armed security guard, they automatically think it's just some trigger-happy, untrained individual who wants to just use their gun. And that's not the case. Like, we are taught in classes from the beginning, you don't use that firearm unless you absolutely have to. And there's laws you have to follow, and there's standards you have to meet. And even there has the situation, there's standards within the situation that you have to meet before you even are allowed to even pull that firearm. And again, de-escalation, everything like that. I think that's been a huge, just learning about de-escalation. I think even my MMA has kind of come forth in that a lot, because in MMA, in this controlled situation, a competitive fight, even though you go full balls to the wall when you're fighting, you still have to have control of yourself with composure in some way or another, especially if you get into a bad spot, like grappling, for example. You know, in jiu-jitsu, you could find yourself in a precarious situation where your airways are getting cut off. However, you're still breathing, so you have to be able to relax and fight out of it before you tap out. You know what I mean? So it's about finding a way out of a bad spot without panicking. And I believe,
Amanda, do you ever, when you're working in security, is there ever a situation where you experience fear? Because I think that in 9 out of 10 situations on the street, barring you being in a situation where maybe you're ambushed, like, you're going to probably be able to handle anyone that you get into a hands-on situation with. Do you ever experience any fear while you're working, being in the situation that you are with your profession?
You know, that's I haven't necessarily. I think I've been fortunate that, I tell people this too. It's kind of like a tactic. I've noticed that when it comes to being a female guard, and I don't know if I'm just lucky or if it's just my appearance, but I don't get messed with. You know what I mean? So I don't know if it's an appearance thing or whatnot, because I've had people tell me, like, you look like the kind of person where you automatically think, I don't want to fuck with this person. That chick looks like she'd kill me, and just, it's kind of true. But, we're all still human. So, I'm not naive to the fact that if I were to get into an altercation that involved multiple people, I could get hurt. I'm sure I could defend myself and do a lot of damage, but I'm still going to receive damage of my own. Like I said, I've been lucky to know that I haven't faced anything like that, and I've never really been struck with an immense amount of fear. And I think it's a lot of desensitizing from just what I've done as a sport, because the fear that I've felt for an opponent across from me, I know that this person trains like I do. They are as skilled as I am. They could be as strong as I am. I know that girl is ready to, come at me with every skill she's got. Whereas most people that are on the street, they don't have those skills. They might have a weapon in their hand, but they're not trained to fight. A lot of them are not. So even when I have gotten into like a physical altercation with, even a male in the past, I've always come out on top easily because they don't know how to grapple. As soon as they hit the ground, they don't know what to do. They don't have any kind of fight knowledge. I was actually working an event on someone's private property where this drunk guy was running around causing problems, and he got jumped by two dudes. And I jumped in the middle and said, hey, stop. And again, this is where I feel like tactically I'm at an advantage, because I feel like men have this natural tick in their head that when a female jumps in the middle, they think, I'm not supposed to hit a girl, so they back off.
Right.
And they did. Those two dudes were walloping this guy, and as soon as I got in there, they both backed off and they stopped. I don't know if it was the uniform or what, but I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. But even like, I've been told by a person before that tactically having a female in a situation like that can help de-escalate, because men just have this natural tick to protect women. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just feel like I've seen that a lot, even in working in clubs where it's been a huge group of dudes beating each other up. As soon as I get in there, they kind of make a point to just stop and back off, because it's, there's a girl right there. I don't know. I just think that's something that I've noticed. But even then, like I said, the last event that I worked, this dude who was getting walloped by these two guys, he didn't know what was going on because he was so drunk, but he got up and he started swinging on me, but he was only like striking me in the leg, and it wasn't hurting me. So I just, I sprawled on his head and tackled him and put him down. And he looked up at me and was like, oh, it's that cop lady. I'm so sorry. He was drunk and belligerent. But even then, again, like, even though he was throwing punches, I've been hit really hard in my life. I've gone through that. I've gone through that. I've been on the other end of somebody who knows how to throw a fist. He didn't know what he was doing, and it wasn't hurting me. So I wasn't scared.
Amanda, I'm gonna be really honest with you here. Like, I have reached out to 3 other female guards, right? And when I reached out to you, you were like, oh yeah, like I'll totally do it. But like, all of my questions were centered around like the experience of being a female guard and how difficult that must be, because clearly, like, our industry is very male heavy, right?
Yeah.
And the majority, 99.9% of the females that get into security, they're not you,
No,
but at the same time, like, I feel like you have to have had some experiences that you feel are based solely off you being a woman. Like, there has to be something that you can look at and say, I identify with that other 99%, where you don't necessarily have the fear of being in a physical confrontation that maybe a lot of the female guards do, and you don't have the fear of maybe being hazed or harassed. But what have you experienced on your end as a female guard that you can relate to some of the other women who maybe don't have your history or your background?
Honestly, not much, because again, appearance wise, like, I get a lot of the same response. Like, a lot of guys look at me and they're like, she looks like she could fuck me up. I wouldn't want to mess with her. And there's not a lot of girls that have that. So I get that, I'm fortunate in that sense.
You're like, I don't deal with that bullshit. That's just me.
Yeah. And what's funny too, is like, I've gone onto sites where guys have been through the ringer of like the regulars who cause problems and this and that. And then I come on site and it's all peaceful. Nothing happened. I don't know why. I don't know if I've got God helping me out or what. But
no, because there's videos of you whipping people's ass online. Like, it's not.
They don't always know that, though. They don't know that right off the bat. But yeah, it's funny to me. I guess the only thing that I can say that I can say I relate to is, and I feel like this is strictly kind of centered into the club atmosphere, which, after a while of doing security, I would much rather, be out in the public protecting at like an event or at a location like a store or a bank or whatever we do. Because again, on the weekends at a club, a lot of people are drunk and they're belligerent and they're in a mood and they're just, haughty and they're on one, and you get the same dudes that come in every weekend acting the same way. And I feel like a lot of men kind of try to size each other up. But as a female, I think, again, my experience, and I think this is just solely associated to just the club atmosphere, you got guys who won't take me seriously, or like I tell them to do something and they just brush me off. They don't listen. So I will have to call a couple of my male counterparts to come up and get them to move or do what I needed to do. I want to say truthfully that I've experienced that from a cultural standpoint, like, and I don't know how other way to put this, because even my partner made this point. She's like, wait, because she comes from an Arabic family. She's like, wait till you have to deal with a Muslim man. He will never respect you. And I was like, yeah, that's very true. Luckily, there's not a lot of Muslim men that make up the homeless population out there. Yeah. But there are a lot of Russians that make up a large population here in Oregon, and they do not like listening to women. I don't care who this offends, but the Russian men in the clubs that I've always dealt with have been the worst. Yeah. They have this self-entitled attitude that they ain't gotta listen to you, you are beneath them, and they will sit there. Like, I had one guy sit there and shush me, and I'm like, get the fuck out of here, man. It's not like literally had to get him to go. And another guy who got violently mad when I literally was told to close down the smoking section at a club I worked at. I mean, this got me fired. It was so ridiculous because this group of particular guys are all regulars, and they buy the VIP section, and they're big money slingers and stuff like that in the club. But a couple of them were upstairs in the smoking section. There were just two of them. And I was told, hey, clear everybody out of here. We got to shut this down. It's almost 2 a.m. Show's almost over. We're done. Everybody off the smoking deck. So I did. I was clearing everybody out. There was just two fellas that came out there, Russian guys. Told them, hey, you guys got to go. No more. There's no more. We're closing this down. Well, one of them was like, oh, okay. And he put his cigarette out and was about to leave. Well, his buddy, who was much larger than him too, took the cigarette out and stuck it in his mouth and did this and started to light it. Well, I walked up and I pulled the cigarette out of his mouth. I threw it in the ash can. I said, no, you got to go. He got so mad at me and got up in my face and was just, you bitch. I was just, and so I called some of my guys up to just you guys handle it. This is ridiculous. Cause I was up there by myself.
Right.
So there are moments where I'm just like, okay, this is probably not where I want to be right now. Let me at least call for backup. Don't care if it's a male or a female that comes up here. I just need more than one person right now because this guy's being ridiculous. And they didn't let that go. It went on for a couple of weeks of me having to explain over and over again what the situation was, why it happened, and this and that. And then eventually I stopped getting called to come and work, and they never really told me why. But
I think that in a perfect world, there's so many aspects of sociology that are so important to security. Combatives, self-defense, firearms, first aid training, but also I think something that's really missed in our industry and even in policing in general is understanding different cultures. Like you're saying, the Russians, the Arabic, Latinos, Blacks, there's a cultural difference to all those different groups.
There is. And everyone, especially these days, people are very sensitive to when you bring that fact up, but I'm like, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is, especially as a woman. That's when you see it the most. And also understanding people's cultural differences allows you to de-escalate things. One of the things that I've noticed is let's just say if you're working in a store in Beaverton, right, which is a predominantly white area, a suburb, a little bit more financially stable. If you have Latino or Black customers that are at customer service, they tend to be louder in how they handle things, how they address things. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're angry or upset, but they have a very boisterous way of doing business, quote unquote. And so, I've tried to get across to some of the associates at some of the stores, just because you hear the volume go up doesn't necessarily mean that that's a threat or that's an issue. But like you're saying right now, problem. I'm not yelling, I'm just talking.
and right now, there's so many great aspects to this revolution of people being more understanding and trying to not stereotype, but there's also a lot that's being lost in terms of just the sociology behind how we interact and deal with people. That I think that if we would have a little bit more of these conversations in a respectful manner, but also just be very curt and upfront about things, we could de-escalate things a lot better in those situations. But again, that's just my, I have this in a perfect world thought process, and we're not necessarily in that perfect world, so we deal with what we have.
I think that's actually a very good point, because culturally people are different. They do act different. They're taught different. It's just the way it is. That's the way of the world. To think that I'm not a collectivist thinker. I think of the individual, and I think that's why I enjoy what I do so much, because even as a fighter, I've had to sit back and learn how to analyze an individual in front of me aside from everybody else. I don't go in there thinking that this opponent's going to be the same as the last opponent. This opponent is going to fight different. She's going to have a different skill set. She's going to bring, and even being at the fight, you can look at somebody and analyze them and be like, this girl's not ready. I can see in, the face of a fighter that they don't want to be there, or they're exhausted from the weight cut, or they're extremely focused and this guy's ready to kill somebody. What I've done as an athlete, especially in a high intense situation, a high intensity area like that, where you're getting, it may not be actual, combat, like say, in the military, but you're going into a situation where you're probably going to get hurt. You learn how to analyze the person in front of you. You learn how to analyze your opponent. You learn how to analyze even their cornermen and whatnot. And I think that's giving me even more information and understanding to do this job, because I can tell when somebody comes in and just, everybody has their like every human, and I love psychology for this too. Humans have their natural tics they show when they're thinking about doing something. You know what I mean? Like, you can kind of see it in their face if you just step back for a second and watch. And I think a lot of people need to understand that, because there's a difference between, malicious intent and people just are kind of a little strange. So I think some people take situations and they overreact or they underreact, because they haven't analyzed what they're looking at, because some guy may come in and look weird, but because of how he's behaving when he comes into a store or wherever you're doing work at, you can tell that he's just looking for a bathroom, as compared to that guy looks like he's coming in with an intent to steal something. Let's watch it. People have their natural ways of behavior. Okay. So I think that a lot of that is missed, with that. And I think a lot of some security guards, and I think it's just a lack of experience, take things too personally. You're going to get somebody who's going to mouth off to you when you tell them to leave. Just ignore them. Just like, yeah, okay, big guy, keep going. You can talk, you can run your mouth as long as you're walking in the direction I told you to go.
I had an associate at the store today. It was early, 6:50, and customer came in and couldn't get the cigarettes that he wanted and kind of threw a fit. And the associate goes, "I'm not in the mood to put up with this today." And I said, belligerence and ignorance doesn't have a time clock. It's all the time. And I said, what are you expecting people to act like in customer service? Like, people are going through a pandemic, like nobody wants to work, even when you come in the store, we're down, staff wise, and we don't have a lot of things because of the supply chain. I'm like, this attitude that you're not going to have to deal with people being in their negative mood or bad mood or having issues. I just expect it when I go to work. And, I see a lot of people, like you said, they're taking it personal and allowing it to kind of get to them. So before I let you go here, I want to ask you one more question. What is your biggest piece of advice to new security guards that are just coming in?
I'm glad you asked for that, actually, because I think this is going to branch off of what we were just talking about, like just now, to new guards. And I think another reason why people don't, analyze a situation, and like you said, that one person coming in, I don't feel like dealing with this today. You have to abandon your ego. You really do. To do this job, you have to abandon your ego, because an ego will get you in trouble. I see guys, again, they're new, they're checking IDs at a door or something like that, and somebody mouths off to them and they mouth off back. And I tell them, hey, just don't even, dude. He's leaving, he's walking away, you're done. Focus on the next person. You literally really have to abandon your ego and not let your feelings get hurt by somebody blah 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 when they're walking away, because they'll walk away and they'll say messed up stuff to you. You know, it's like, unless it's really a direct threat that you might need to take seriously, just ignore them. You know, you have to learn to ignore quite a lot when you do this. You know, unless you're working a job where you're constantly alone and all you have to do is just watch a site or a gate. You know, you're going to deal with belligerent jerks. You're going to deal with homeless people that are probably on drugs. You're going to, and they are like children, aggressive grown children. They really are. You have to learn de-escalation techniques and how to just get your way around them. You know, there's been times where I worked in a club, and a lot of security guards do start off doing stuff like that, you know, working in a club or something like that. And they can't get a guy to leave. And I got really good at, when they're trying to, argue with me and be like, look, come outside. Let's go outside where it's quiet. I just need you to step outside with me. And that usually would work. And they'd get them to get out the door. And sometimes I could de-escalate it to a point where I'm like, okay, you can go back in as long as you behave. And sometimes it was just a technique to be like, no, I'm not talking to you. I said that to get you out the door. You're not coming back in this club. You know, sometimes asking them to come outside and have a conversation. Just come out and talk to me. Because sometimes they just want to be heard. Like, oh, well, look, just come outside and talk to me. And then you can choose to maybe let it go and let them back in, or just be like, no, I said that to get you out the door, and then go back inside. And then they have to get past all the other guards that are at the door if they want to come in. And usually they won't. By that point, it's over. So I think that's my biggest advice, is just definitely learn to abandon your own ego. Learn how to be craftier than these people, because in the end you will be, especially in a club atmosphere where they might be drunk and they can't even listen right. You got to learn to be, you got to learn to kind of play a chess game and move around them and get what you want them to do. And yeah, same thing as me. I would say learn some combat training, go to an MMA gym and learn to do jiu-jitsu, put it into perspective and spar. Get used to feeling what it's like to be punched, get used to feeling what it's like to be picked up and slammed on the ground. Like, these types of things will desensitize you to a point where it's like, when you do get into it with somebody on the street, it's been very rare where I've ever found somebody that made me afraid that they could actually hurt me, because I know I'm a better fighter than them and they don't know the things that I know. And getting slammed on the mats is not the same as being slammed on concrete, but it's still, I know enough that I know that I'm going to be okay in a lot of ways. I think that's my advice for female guards, is to, put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And that's the thing about jiu-jitsu, is it teaches you to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. Learning how to grapple is, I think, an essential tool for everybody, especially when you're doing security, because a lot of times out of 10, people get on the ground and they don't know what to do. They do not know how to fight off their back. Grappling is an essential tool. I think everybody should learn it. So, just as much as they tell you to, train with your firearm if you carry one, train if you don't have a firearm. Know how to be physically ready for things like that, especially grappling, because 9 times out of 10, when you get into a confrontation with somebody, you're wrestling them. You're wrestling them, you're grappling them, they're grabbing you, you're grabbing them. It's a grappling situation. Learn to grapple. It will desensitize you and help you a lot to think clearly when you're in those physical altercations. Learn how to grapple. Judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, anything.
Absolutely. All right, Amanda, thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it. Hey, where can people find you? Do you have like your socials, Instagram, anything like that?
I hate social media, but I do.
You don't have to if you don't want to do it.
No, it's cool, man. I appreciate it. I'm not like on every handle like everybody. They've got a Twitch, they've got a this, they got a that. I have a fan page on Facebook and I have an Instagram, and that is it. And I think both of them are The Lady Killer MMA 00. You can find me just by looking up Amanda the Lady Killer Bill on either Instagram or Facebook. That's the only place I'm at. So
awesome, good deal. Well, hey, continue to stay safe, and hope to see you fight again. I'll take some tickets and I'll be there with bells on, and bring the wife and come out there, and we'll be your cheering section.
All right, man. That sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot for coming on. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you.